Welcome back to the Gabriel Speaks Podcast, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. We've got some exciting updates on this episode. We have a new UAP hearing coming next Tuesday, and we will be broadcasting that live from the channel. So don't forget to set your reminders, and you can watch it live with me as we watch the new whistleblowers/witnesses talk about their experience. This episode, we're going to go over all of those whistleblowers and some of the things that they may be talking about at the upcoming hearing. We've got cuts from podcasts that they've been a part of. Should be pretty cool to see and give us a little sample of what we're in for next Tuesday morning. We're also going to get into some more CIA operations within the United States. Now, these have been called out and there have been hearings, and we're going to review some of this stuff, and we're going to talk about some of these names that were involved in the early days of CIA deception, especially within our borders in the United States where they're not supposed to be operating. All this and more coming up on this episode of the Gabriel Speaks Podcast. Don't forget, like and subscribe to the channel. We're going to get into it right away. Let's go ahead and check out these new witnesses at the UAP hearing. So to start with, I'm going to go ahead and bring this up here. Now, here are the new whistleblowers, and I was a little surprised, at least at one of the names right off the bat that jumped at me was George Knapp. Now, we know George Knapp has been a prominent name in the UFO field for decades. I mean, literally decades. He's uncovered all kinds of stories. He's worked with all kinds of whistleblowers. Some of his more recent stuff is with Jeremy or Bell on the Weaponized podcast, excuse me. And they've been doing some exciting stuff together as well. We've had our fun joking around with Mr. Corbell's quantum jujitsu back in the day, but it was all in good and fun. Now, let's take a look at these whistleblowers. We've got Jeffrey Nuccetelli. Now, his experience happened like almost, I think, over 20 years ago, and he's going to tell us about that. We've got Chief Alexandra Wiggins, or Alex Wiggins, who is still active within the United States Navy. And we've got Dylan Borland, an Air Force veteran who we can't find anything about. I don't know if that's by design, but literally I was able to dig up one or two pictures on this gentleman and what his current rank and some of his career stats were, but that's about it. So let's take a look at this and some of the testimony from some of these folks. We're going to start out with George Knapp and a short about him, and then we're going to get into these other three whistleblowers/witnesses going forward.
George Knapp joins us now with UFOs, the best evidence. George?
There are many unanswered questions about UFOs. Speculation about some long-standing government cover-up is tough for many people to swallow. You got photos, you got movie footage, you got video. There is some kind of a phenomenon here that can't just be written off.
I've always approached it as a news story. It's not my religion. It's not a belief. I don't know what to believe even now. I have secret stashes of files and things all over the station.
Mountains of evidence compiled from the government's own files.
No one who knew Area 51 from the inside ever talked publicly.
Well, there's several, actually 9 flying saucers.
They have between 30 and 50 alien bodies.
The government has been telling us for years that they're not real.
And how his life's work still influences the conversations on UFOs.
If it is true, it would be the biggest story in history.
Okay, there is whistleblower 1. George Knapp. We know that he has been in the field for a long time, and I love the way he finishes up this quick intro here.
36 years later, I'm still trying to figure it out.
Boy, aren't we all, George? We are still all trying to figure this out. So that's going to be our first witness. Well, I don't know the order, but that's going to be the first one we're going to cover. Now, if you haven't heard Jeff Nuccetelli's story, this was on the Ryan Graves podcast. Let's go ahead and listen to his story about a giant football-size UFO flying over his base.
The cops on base, we do general law enforcement functions. We respond to domestic violence incidents, DUIs, shoplifting, everything a regular cop would do. But we also have a massive security role. We're in charge of all the security on the base. So we have guys and men and women stationed all over Vandenberg, which is a massive installation. I think it's 100,000 square acres of land, 36 miles of coastland, and scattered about that land mass are these launch facilities. And they have some of the biggest launch facilities in the world there. They could put up the big Titan rockets, like I think that's the one that went to the moon. So we guard all those facilities. So back in 2003, I was the senior patrolman working law enforcement on Bravo flight. I came in to do shift change with Delta flight offgoing. And I knew something was up when I rolled into the squadron building because there was a big crowd of people at the smoke pit right across from our armory. It's in the parking lot. And there's this big crowd, and as I pulled in, they all started to point at me. They're like, there's Jeff, and I could...
Look, this is some advice for you if you're trying to find out information and get the inside scoop of anywhere. It's always going down in the smoke pit. So even if you don't smoke cigarettes, it's a good idea to have a lighter and hang out there because all the folks are talking in the smoke pit. I digress. Let's get back to Jeff here.
Tell something big had happened. I go over to the smoke pit and everybody just starts to tell me, everybody's talking at once about this UFO event that happened that morning. And initially I'm like, are you guys playing a prank? Because Air Force cops are notorious for playing pretty elaborate pranks. But really quickly, I realized they were not joking around. They're like, now this happened. They said there was this gigantic UFO flying around LF-21, which is Launch Facility 21, located on the north end of Vandenberg. So the story is about 8:45 in the morning. The dispatcher gets a call from range control, a technical sergeant from range control. And he says, I'm reporting an event that occurred at LF-21 and LF-10, two different sites in the same location. And what he said was the contractors working on site called range control, and they said there was a gigantic floating red square over LF-21 at low altitude. And they were just standing there watching this thing. I had the original statement from the contractors. There were 3 contractors that worked for Boeing that saw this object, and they wrote sworn written statements. It was a somewhat flattened square plane, and basically just a big square object, the size of a football field, silently floating over the launch pad. Wow. Red in color, glowing this red color. So as far as I know, it wasn't a cube. It was like a flattened square.
Got it.
So yeah, they start telling me the story. And as they're briefing me on the event, I find out that the flight chief and their senior patrolman, these are the people I'm talking to, they're briefing me. They responded out there. It's when we have an incident, we have a checklist. There's no checklist for a UFO, right?
So I learned that as well, yes.
So what happens in that case is the on-duty flight chief will make a determination. Who do I need to notify? So this was definitely up-channeled, at least to the wing. And I can't imagine that the command post just sat on it and didn't up-channel that to higher headquarters.
What happened later that day?
So later in the day, things get like very interesting. It turns into like a movie, basically. As day transitioned into night, I'm cruising all over this gigantic installation. I was mostly out on the coast, and I'm looking in the sky, and I'm going around talking to everybody. I'm stopping at different security posts, like, what do you guys think about the UFO? We get this radio transmission from our security guys out at Slick 4. Now, Slick 4 is Space Launch Facility 4. It's on the south end of the base. I don't remember exactly what the transmission was, but it started out something like, be advised, we've got some strange lights out over the ocean off of Slick 4. And, dispatchers are like, roger that, keep a visual on it. And very quickly, within a few minutes, the transmission started to get more and more excited and I guess scared. They're
agitated.
They're saying, hey, these things are, this light is moving erratically. It's getting closer. It's getting larger. And then all hell breaks loose. And they start screaming over the radio. It's coming right at us. It's coming right for us. Now it's right here. This object came in, was moving strangely, erratically. It got bigger and brighter as it came in. And then it came at a high rate of speed and flew right up to the entry control point and stopped. And they all stared at it. And then it just shot off. And this object was large too.
Wow. Yeah. It was, so it shot, did it shoot over land? Did it shoot
back
over water?
It came in from the west. So the west coast of the base is the Pacific Ocean. It came in from the west and then shot off. I think it was like kind of northeast. According to, and I have one direct eyewitness that I'm good friends with that I've talked to about it. He described it as the same square.
I am.
Wow. Okay. So that's Jeff's story. Comes in to work. There's a lot of contractors that have been talking about a crazy craft they saw. These are contractors that have very high levels of clearance, very top secret, classified, a lot of classified operations going on there at that base, a lot of top secret stuff going on at that base. So these are contractors, not just regular contractors, these are contractors with clearances, are trained to sight things in the sky and out in the ocean that are strange. And they sighted this thing in the overnight, and they're talking about it all morning. And then he starts his shift, finds out later that night on his shift, here's a dispatch over the radio of these folks at this southern post literally kind of losing their shit because here comes another UFO, another huge one. It's coming right at them, stops right when it gets to them, and then just takes off. What's interesting is that I don't think he was a direct witness to that. He was a direct witness to the activity that he heard on the radio and spoke with all of the witnesses, but he wasn't actually a firsthand witness. So that's interesting. Now, Alex Wiggins, he actually is a firsthand witness, and you've probably seen his video if you've been researching UFOs ever or watching the news at all. It's the one Jeremy Corbell released where the videos are coming up out of the UFOs are coming up out of the water, excuse me. And there's no wings. There's nothing indicating there's some type of propulsion, yet they're moving. So very interesting looking crafts. Things that are flying up in the sky. Let's hear what Alex Wiggins has to say. And again, this is our third now witness, this one firsthand, of a UAP while in the Navy. And he's still serving in the Navy, apparently.
Operations Specialist Senior Chief Alexandra Wiggins. Been in the Navy for 23 years and counting. I don't view myself as a whistleblower because I associate whistleblowing with, something that is wrong and the person speaking up against, something or a system that is doing wrong things. And off good old San Diego coast, being in the Navy, we go out there, we do our mission, we, workups and things of that nature. And, every now and again, we will see satellites, we will see shooting stars, things of that nature. And then you'll see things that are very unexplained, like the video that Jeremy released, and to my surprise, which is something I've never witnessed, was a light I noticed on the horizon, but it looked as if it were surfacing out of the water and going up. Now, seeing lights on the horizon, very typical when you're out in the water, but seeing a light on the horizon going into the air is a different story. I'm not sure of what I'm seeing. What goes through my head, maybe there's a military team that's out there conducting flight operations. That's where you see the video cut into play, where you see it slew into that target to kind of look at it. And they're the operators, so they know how to zoom in and kind of see what the profile of the contact that we're looking at, to kind of understand, okay, if it were a ComNav radar, which is a typical, airliner, 747, then we're going to say, okay, good to go. They're, headed off to Hawaii or wherever, anywhere to the west. But that night, we didn't witness that as shown by the video. 20, 30 seconds pass after the video stops, and all of a sudden, you just see all four of them take off to the northeast all at the same time, just out of nowhere. And if I had to talk speed, it would say like maybe 2 steps behind instantaneous. It wasn't like if you blink, it's gone. We had time to watch them go off into the distance, but really instantly. No noise, no sonic boom, no, effects in the water that, cause rippling in the water, nothing. Nobody was affected. Nothing was affected. We didn't get a gust of wind to hit us. And that's anything else, I'm not a scientist, but anything else that could have been disturbed with that level of speed was not disturbed. They all executed at the same time, leaving. It's not like 3 of them left and then one was kind of like a little behind them. No, they were all in sync at the same time. And that's why I said earlier that it was my thoughts were either they synced together like we do in the Navy and we all take off at turn at the same time, or, get in formation at the same time and execute the order at the same time, or one entity is controlling all 4 of those objects.
Are you willing to testify if you were called, or fill out a form to Arrow, or take it further if you're asked?
That's a good question, George. I'm not sure. I definitely, I see myself as someone that's just stepping up to share his experience. I don't see it as anything other than that. Where this goes from here, I don't know. I wouldn't mind, just adding my voice to those that have come before me, like yourself and Jeremy. I don't mind.
Okay, so that's Mr. Wiggins. First-hand account. Very interesting. We have his testimony. We know there were other people there. If you watch the full interview on the Weaponized podcast, he gets into how he had a debate with one of the officers that tried to kind of shrug it off and say, some kind of plane. They get into it, and he kind of proves the officer there's no way it could have been a plane. He gets the agreement of a lot of the folks on the bridge. So this was a real thing, and he witnessed it. Pretty good stuff. I don't know where that leaves us, but we're going to get that on the record at the hearing that we're going to be covering Tuesday morning. Dylan Borland is a little different. We're not able to find really anything on Dylan. What I was able to find is that he worked for the Air Force as a geospatial intelligence analyst. He almost 4 years for Base Systems, an aerospace company, as an intelligence analyst, and worked almost 6 years for Intrepid Solutions and Services LLC, which is also, I believe, an intelligence analyst. So that's about all we were able to find on Dylan. It appears that if he has been out there talking about his story, it hasn't been under his real name. Or he just hasn't been sharing his story. It will be interesting to hear what Dylan has to say. Again, next Tuesday morning, bright and early, 7 a.m. Pacific time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, and 9 a.m. for you folks in the Central Standard Time Zone. We will be covering live the UAP hearing. So just make sure to tune in here and we'll be checking it out. And it will be interesting to see what Dylan has to say. Okay, moving on. There's been a lot of talk lately about people getting kind of messed with, and we would call that, I guess, psychological operations or Psyops. And I've been doing research on MK Ultra, Project Bluebird, Project Artichoke. These were some of the early programs of the CIA where they were working on actually brainwashing, manipulating the general public and then individuals as well, and even going so far as to try to turn them into assassins, to try to turn them into kind of La Femme Nikitas in some cases. I've got together here a couple of things on the CIA for you. Now, the first thing, it's a little intense, okay? It is some testimony from some women that went through Project Artichoke and Project Bluebird in the early phases. This was with a Dr. L. Green, who it's pretty hard to watch. So if you can be triggered by physical abuse or abuse of little ones, you may want to fast forward this. The CIA built a full behavior control library for Bluebird Artichoke, covering brainwashing, lie detection, hypnotism, amnesia, ESP, shock therapy, prefrontal lobotomy, and a who's who of drugs from mescaline to metrazole. Early OSS CIA experiments, we're talking 1945 to the 1950s, tested roughly 88 witting Americans using benzodrine, caffeine, scopolamine, alcohol, and THC acetate, and even ran an unwitting 1943 test on a notorious New York gangster. That gangster was Autist Little Augie Del Garcia, a New York mobster tied to Lucky Luciano. OSS agent George Hunter White spiked his cigarettes with a high dose of a cannabis extract or truth drug, and he noted he became extremely garrulous. Hypnosis wasn't just hand-waving. They explored disguised induction via machines like the polygraph, audiometers, and EKGs, aiming to trigger trance states covertly. Unlike MK Ultra, Bluebird Artichoke didn't throw huge sums at outside labs, but it tracked 357 folders of outside experts. We're talking doctors, psychiatrists, chemists, hypnotists, and officials at NIH, FDA, and the U.S. military. The stash even held a 35mm film with microfilm docs on LSD and psychological warfare, not to mention random tourist snapshots mixed in. Why these were kept is anyone's guess. A sealed display card from Columbia University's Parkinson's research listed compounds 2 labeled 08958 and MK02. They couldn't be identified from the files, implying the 1950s investigational drugs may have been tied to Parkinson's research.
The purpose of the study was to find out about communist brainwashing techniques. CIA documents show that the agency was interested in developing mind control methods of its own to precondition and control Chinese living in this country to be sent back to their homeland as CIA agents.
俗话说筑梦人生，可惜我是为他人之梦。 这场梦中，我无法决定结局，我的命都由他人掌控。这辈子努力耕耘，最终都是他人作手。不能再站在原地不动，我拒绝躺平。要迈出第一步，总是最艰难的。是时候该构筑我自己的梦想了。
So interesting. That news clip was from the late 70s. Here we are in 2025 doing the exact same thing, but this time trying to get them to willingly become spies instead of brainwashing them. Or how willing is it? Who knows? Very interesting.
Doing. In CIA documents we have examined, it says that the project that was being done here, they intended to use everything learned about the new agents to induce them to, quote, to perform acts of a complex, purposeful nature.
Yeah, but that was
the
never
effects
done.
of which may be out of keeping with the individual's
That
previous
sort
behavior.
of thing was never done. Those people were not. That was when they first came here. The first people they sent up to see us, you see, were operational type people from the CIA with some rather wild ideas. We were not able to do this nor interested in it.
They were, though.
Some of the low-level people were, but the high-level people were not.
But documents clearly show that the CIA was attempting to develop agents over whom they had as much control as possible. Agents who would perform tasks contrary to their own good. What in the world were they looking for with the magic mushrooms?
I think the best answer to that is that they were looking for fundamental information on compounds that would be capable of causing changes in behavior, changes in mental attitude.
Did you ever consider what would have happened if any of these substances were given to, say, unwitting people?
Oh, I don't remember having considered that specifically.
I trust perhaps you've thought about it.
Well, I haven't worried about it. Your question again, what would I have thought had I known that
any of these substances would
have been given to
unwitting persons?
You mean a hostile agent of another government?
No, I mean,
think that was probably one of the things they had in mind.
I mean, testing it out on an American citizen.
I guess I must seem very, very cold-blooded about this, but I don't recall ever having been very much preoccupied with that issue.
I'm super creepy interview. Definitely don't think I'd be hanging out with that guy. Now, this is a hard part we talked about. This is the victim testimony. These are two victims that came forward. This is tough testimony, but I feel like it needed to be shared. People need to understand the lengths to which folks will go in the name of protecting the country.
Christy Nicola, born July of 1962, rendering me 32 years of age. I was a subject in radiation as well as mind control and drug experiments performed by a man I knew as Dr. Green, and Donald Richard Ebner, my natural father, was involved with Dr. Green in the experiments. I was a subject from 1966 to 1976. Dr. Green performed radiation experiments on me in 1970, focusing on my neck, throat, and chest, 1972 focusing on my chest, and my uterus in 1975. Each time I became dizzy, nauseous, and threw up. All these experiments were performed on me in conjunction with mind control techniques and drugs in Tucson, Arizona. His objective was to gain control of my mind and train me to be a spy assassin. The first significant memory took place at Kansas City University in 1966. Don Ebner took me there by plane when my mom was out of town. I was in what looked like a laboratory, and there seemed to be other children. I was strapped down, naked, spread eagle, on a table, on my back. Dr. Green had electrodes on my body, including my head. He used what looked like an overhead projector and repeatedly said he was burning different images into my brain while a red light flashed aimed at my forehead. In between each sequence, he used electric shock on my body. I was 4 years old. You can see from this experiment that Dr. Green used trauma, drugs, post-hypnotic suggestion, and more trauma in an effort to gain total control of my mind. Dr. Green moved on to wanting me to kill dolls that looked like real children. He often tied me down in a cage, which was near his office. Between 1972 and 1976, he and his assistants were sometimes careless and left the cage unlocked. Whenever physically possible, I snuck into his office and found files with reports and memos addressed to CIA and military personnel. He wanted me dead. I developed multiple personality disorder because Dr. Green's goal was to split my mind into as many parts as possible so he could control me totally. He failed, but I've had to endure years of constant physical, mental, and emotional pain, even to this day. I ask that you keep in mind that the memories I've described are but a glimpse of the countless others that took place over the 10 years between 1966 and 1976.
Saying they took an already abused 7-year-old child and compounded my suffering beyond belief. The saddest part is, I know for a fact that I was not alone. There were countless other children in my same situation, and there was no one to help us. Dr. L. Wilson Green, who claimed to have received $50 million from the Edgewood Chemical and Radiology Laboratory, once described to Dr. Charles Brown that, quote, children were used as subjects because they were more fun to work with and cheaper, too. They needed lower profile subjects than soldiers or government people, so only young, willing females would do. Besides, he said, I like scaring them. They in the agency think I'm a god, creating subjects and experiments for whatever deviant purposes Sid and James can think up. Sid being Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, James, Dr. James Hamilton. Dr. John Gittinger tested me, Dr. Cameron gave me the shocks, and Dr. Green the x-rays. Then I was told by Sid Gottlieb that, quote, I was right for the big A, or meaning artichoke. I would remember only whatever explanations Dr. Robert G. Heath of Tulane Medical University gave me for the odd bruises, needle marks, burns on my head, fingers, and even the genital soreness. The next year, I was sent to a lodge in Maryland called Deep Creek Cabins to learn how to sexually please men. I was taught how to coerce them into talking about themselves, and it was Richard Helms, who was deputy director of the CIA, Dr. Gottlieb, kept George White, Morris Allen, who all planned on filming as many high government agency officials and heads of academic institutions and foundations as possible, so that later when the funding for mind control and radiation started to dwindle, projects would continue. I was used to entrap many unwitting men, including themselves, all with the use of a hidden camera. I was only 9 years old when this sexual humiliation began. I overheard conversations about a part of the agency called ORD, which I found out was Office of Research and Development. It was run by Dr. Green, Dr. Stephen Aldrich, Martin Orne, and Morris Allen. Quote, in order to keep more funding coming from different sources for radiation and mind control projects, he suggested stepping up the amounts of stressors used, and also the blackmail portion of the experiments. He said it needed to be done faster than to get rid of the subjects, or they were asking for us to come back later and haunt them with our remembrances.
Wow. So I hear that, and I immediately think, boy, that sounds familiar. Sounds like what they were doing at Epstein Island, right? They were using underage girls. Here we have one started as young as 4 years old. The other one coming from a broken, abusive, tattered home, 9 years old. And they are brainwashing them. They are teaching them to manipulate and try to get older, powerful men to put themselves in compromising positions so that they can record that and then use that for bribery if they need to. It sounds like Epstein Island. The only difference is they didn't have to do all of the brainwashing to girls. They just needed to find girls that were in bad situations and manipulate them. That's all it took. It's insane when you really think about it. And another reason we need everything that they have on Epstein released, because all of those people need to be held accountable. All right, I'll get off my soapbox now. That was heavy. Let's take a look at the CIA just using propaganda. And the CIA using propaganda in other countries, like, that's pretty much a known. We expect that, right? But the CIA using propaganda at home against our own citizens, that's not good. And we had an instance going back several decades where they had up to 400 journalists, essentially not so much on the payroll, but they were able to, in one way or another, get these journalists to put out whatever messaging they needed. Let's listen to a whistleblower interview here. And there's also some other very interesting pieces of propaganda that the CIA have been involved with for a while now.
Is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds. And this is a major function of the CIA. 400 journalists cooperating with the CIA, including some of the biggest names in the business, to consciously introduce the stories into the press.
Well, give me a concrete example of how you use the press this way, how a false story is planted and how you got it published.
Well, for example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Times. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe, Reuters and AFP. The management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was. And we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs in almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort. Totally.
For our correspondents at that time to make use of the CIA agent chiefs of station and other members of the executive staff of CIA as sources of information which were useful in their assessments of world conditions. It seems to me that a reporter's got to be much more circumspect in doing it now, or he runs the risk of at least being looked at with considerable disfavor by the public.
He's saying that because of the way that the flow of information works in a country like ours, where we have free speech, for the most part, that they can't necessarily create the propaganda like they used to, but what they can do is flood the zone essentially with disinformation and misinformation. Now, if you have been in the UFO or UAP research field, you know that sounds familiar, because that's what that's what the CIA have done to this subject, and other intelligence officials have done to this community, to this subject for years and years and years. I mean, decades upon decades. That's how we get our most hated lists, and that's how we get terms that we stay away from, because we know, and we're still learning, some of the pitfalls. It seems like as soon as researchers figure out some of the pitfalls and tricks that are being used, the intelligence officials are already on to the next one. But I guess that's why they get paid the big bucks, and I guess that's why they're protecting our country. However, protecting this secret from getting out, it appears, has been a part of what they've been doing for decades. Are these new whistleblowers going to bring something new to the field? Yeah, they're going to bring some new stuff on the record. Are we going to break through any walls and find a UFO hidden in a bunker somewhere? I don't think so. I don't think that's happening. If it does happen, it's not going to be anytime real soon. However, it will be good to get more information on the record, because the more data points that NAP can provide and put on the record, the more stuff all the individual researchers can start digging into. Just like when Schallenberger released his report, and I found the Amy Eskridge story on page 230 of 240 or something ridiculous like that. And that's a story that is quite interesting. So I am excited to hear what they have to say at this hearing, and I hope you all tune in to catch it. As far as the testimony that we heard from the victims from Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke, it's absolutely heart-wrenching. And to think about the fact that these were children when they started doing this to them, it's just really tough to take in. On top of that, you had one of them testify it was their own father who was friends with the main doctor, Dr. Green, and voluntarily got her involved with this craziness. Just so you know that this isn't completely made up, and that these women aren't completely speaking out of turn, this was some of the declassified stuff I'm able to find. You're able to download this right off of the internet. I could even put the link down below, but this is the declassified information on Project Bluebird and Project Artichoke. And let me tell you, the declassified information includes many of the things that these victims were going through. This was hard stuff. We're talking hypnosis, drugs, electroshock therapy. That's probably on this page that they have blanked out. Brainwashing. It gets into the personnel that was used. Interrogation literature, of course, that's completely blacked out. Miscellaneous, that's completely blacked out. We'll never see that. We'll never know what's in there. Number of drugs and one injection device were found in the box. Automatic self-injecting device, Roduxin, Thorazine, hydrochloride, methadone, Marazine, Aprazole, barbiturate, acid. A sealed display card from Columbia University, from the Parkinson Research Lab showing the drugs listed below. All the drugs seem to have been used for the treatment of Parkinsonism. Acute cholinergic drugs used in the treatment of Parkinson were hyoscine, artelan, theoprene. I can't pronounce half of these, but 2 drugs were listed under the study that I pointed out in that recording, compound 08958 and MK02. They could not be identified. There's no way of knowing what they contain without inquiring through the Parkinson Research Lab at Columbia University. So they put in this paper, it's their assumption that these were new drugs for the treatment of Parkinson's, which are under study at the lab in the 1950s. So on top of all of this shit that they're doing to these poor girls, they're also testing Parkinson's drugs on them. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. And this is our government, our CIA, doing this to our citizens' children. Let that sink in. And now I hope you understand why I've been banging the drum for Epstein for so long, because we've done this. We've been through this. This wasn't supposed to happen again. And here we are in almost a worse situation with some of the most powerful elite people involved. Some of them in our halls of Congress. It's absolutely disgusting. One thing to note. This is a memo from the Director of Intelligence. This is from 1955. This is from Alan Dulles. And he was actually defending Dr. Wilson. And just looking at bullet point 2 here, the agency became interested in the potential importance of psychochemicals, primarily because of the enthusiasm and foresight of Dr. Wilson Green, technical director of the Chemical and Radiological Laboratories at the Army Chemical Center. Dr. Green's ideas were included in a report written by him in 1949 entitled Psychochemical Warfare, a New Concept of War. Oh, doesn't that sound like some good reading? That sounds like a book, when I'm putting the little one to bed, I tuck them in, get them their hot cocoa, and we read about psychological warfare and how we can completely wreck people just by manipulating their brain. Wow. So Dr. Green is buried at Arlington, like all true heroes should be. If you don't pick up the sarcasm there, I'm sorry. I'm laying it on pretty thick. I don't know if this is a man that I would call a hero, making guinea pigs out of people. It's not like it stopped with those girls, right? We know there was more. They mention other children. We know that there was the entire issue with them testing LSD on actual soldiers and then turning around and very quickly using their own report saying there's no long-term effects of this stuff. Everybody volunteered. But just because they volunteered and it was all on the up and up doesn't mean we could tell them what they were taking, because that would have ruined the experiment. I'm sorry, y'all. The sarcasm is getting laid on thick because, if it's one of those things, like if you don't laugh, you cry, right? So, folks, what I can say as far as all that stuff goes, protect your family, protect your kids, pay attention to what they're ingesting through their phones, through their tablets, what they're listening to, what they're reading. You don't have to be a helicopter parent, and you don't have to be restrictive of expression. Just be careful. Be mindful of what your little ones are being influenced by. I think it's more important now than ever, especially when we see all the influence just the CIA was able to have on the media. If that's the case, we know there's a lot of rich people that want to make money. They're going to be using that same type of influence through technology, like television and phones, to get our children to buy certain things, to get people to do certain things. We know this. So now that you've seen how real it is, how real it can become from near 50 years ago, you have to be aware of what could possibly be getting used now to manipulate our reality and manipulate what we think that we think about things. Very interesting things to kick around. Okay, now the UAP hearings, I'm excited for those. Again, don't forget, set your alarm clock if you're on the Pacific time zone, because that is early. 7 a.m. We're going to be live. You don't have to scramble around and look for the channel or anything. Hop on over to the Gabriel Speaks Podcast YouTube channel, and we are going to be broadcasting that puppy live. I hope to see you there. I'm excited. We'll have a chat open. We'll be able to get your questions in, your comments, your concerns, whatever you want to say about these guys and their testimony. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the show, y'all. I really appreciate it. We've seen this channel really explode over the last couple months, and it's really been awesome to see. So keep subscribing, sharing, whatever y'all are doing to help this channel grow. I really appreciate it. Keep doing it. And I will see you Tuesday morning for the UAP hearing. Have a great weekend, everyone.